get that complete answer.
Thank you. Senator Flood is going to answer some questions, and I guess his name is appropriate today for the discussion we're having, but rather than have a play on his name by
1 minute.
Flood, I'm going to call him Senator Waters. Senator Waters, can the state order those districts to release that water and let it flow downstream without paying them?
Okay. Could you repeat your question?
Yes. Can the state order those districts that are going to sell this water to the state to release that water without the state purchasing it?
Yes.
Why does not the state do that?
Well, I think we're in a position for a couple of reasons. Bostwick's irrigation district sits right on the Kansas border, and there's a Bostwick in Kansas, and getting this water to Kansas in the fastest way possible is the goal, and I see the money paid to the irrigation district as money that mitigates the damages that those irrigators will have not being able to access that water.
Time. Senator Chambers, your light is next. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I may have to put up some motions not to try to hurt the bill, but to engage in discussion of the bill, because I did not offer but one amendment. Senator Flood, I do not understand the rationale behind what you just told me. If the state pays for the water and it's released after being paid for, is the water going to move at a faster clip on its way to Kansas than would be the case if the state just ordered the district to release that water?
No, the speed of the water in the river basin on its way to Kansas would remain the same.
So how would it get there quicker if the state pays for it than if the state orders the release without paying for it?
Well, I think it's a responsible approach toward mitigating the great harm to the economy of the Republican River Basin if we can make money available to irrigators that aren't getting additional water or getting their water out of the stream, and placing additional reductions in allocations on the groundwater wells in the basin.
So this money is going to go into the hands of irrigators who will no longer be irrigating once the state purchases this water. Is that true?
They will no longer have that access to the surface water that is held at the Bostwick Irrigation District.
So this money will go into the pockets of these farmers?
Yes.
And you think that's a good policy, or is it a political decision that is made in order to benefit some people who, through their activities involved in irrigating, created the problem that we're here to solve today?
Well, I think the economy of southwest Nebraska is as important as any corner of the state, and we're trying to find a solution in compliance where the basin itself is paying 80% of the fees in the big picture, and addressing the problem so that we can keep Main Street open, understanding that agriculture in those counties is the main industry.
But I want to make it crystal clear for the record that the state does not have to pay for this water in order to have that water released. It chooses to do so through the action of the legislature on this bill. Is that accurate?
Although I have not done a substantial amount of legal research on this, I think you are correct in that the state could, in its regulatory powers as a sovereign state in the United States, could say to the Bostwick Irrigation District, that water goes to Kansas.
Okay.
You are right.
Now, when we talk about purchasing water rights, what is a water right?
Well,
a well?
You have a groundwater right to pump water out of the ground as issued by an NRD. You have a surface water right if the DNR has given you the authority to pump surface water onto your cropland.
Now, what is surface water?
Surface water is the water in streams. Groundwater is the water under the field.
Is it possible that water was present, talking about surface water, in one location and it's no longer present there now?
In some cases, both in surface and groundwater situations. That is true.
But that person who has that land still has those, quote, water rights, unquote, even though no water remains there. Is that true or false?
I believe that they would have a valid right to have a well there if they're, but it wouldn't pump anything if there's no water left.
But they would still have the water rights.
1 minute.
Yes, technically.
Is the state going to purchase some of these water rights from people where there no longer is water? Under this bill, is that going to happen?
I would think, I can't answer that question honestly, Senator Chambers. I don't.
But it could possibly happen, couldn't it? If you're purchasing water rights, there's nothing in this bill that says water must be present, is there?
I can't answer that question. I don't have enough information.
Thank you. Members of the legislature, you all are lucky that I didn't spend time asking the questions that need to be asked on this bill based on my analysis as somebody who knows less about water than Senator Mines. But I can read, and there are a lot of things not stated in this bill. You are better going to understand my poem about the water, the river starting as a little trickle, and the farther it goes, the wider and deeper it becomes. I don't think people have any concept.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Then you can go to specific areas of the state and talk about the huge amounts of water they consume. And when we were told the other day that a relatively small percentage of the state's population will be upping the money to deal with this issue, it was not said at the same time how small a percentage of the state's population is using the lion's share of the water. This issue did not just happen, as I was going to elaborate on the last time I spoke. There were people watching, there were people exploiting a situation, and they knew it couldn't go on like that forever. You know what needs to be done? What needs to be done is to take all of the land that was irrigated, 1,100,000 acres, and turn them over to 4 large corporations. Then you can make them pay their way. And the public, which had no part to play in creating the problem, will have to pay. And how does that happen? Right now, you have to say, you cannot make these individual irrigators pay what they ought to because they'll go out of business. So if you break it down to a lot of little irrigators, no single one of them can pay all that he or she owes. But if you consolidate that land and put it into the hands of one entity,
1 minute,
that entity can pay its way without going broke. The notion of the small or medium-sized farm is a notion that has to go by the boards. Long ago, the concept of the family farm as a viable economic unit went by the boards. People who had family farms also had outside jobs. They look back to a nostalgic day when things never were like people today want to convince themselves they used to be. Everything has got to change. And this issue, I think, is bringing it to us in a stark fashion, but we're not dealing with it realistically. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Senator Chambers. Senator Loudon, will you yield?
Yes.
Senator Loudon, in this bill, is it true that purchases of something will be made, either purchases of water or water rights? Will that happen under this bill, one or the other, or both of those things?
Both of those things, I think, is the way it's set up under this bill.
From
certainly
whom?
Certainly the water, anyway.
From whom will water be purchased?
Well, it'd be those irrigation districts down there in the Republican River Valley.
The water will be purchased from irrigation districts?
Yes.
How did these districts come into the ownership of water?
That I suppose I'll do my best to explain it, if I may. These irrigation districts, this water is collected as it runs down these rivers and comes out of these different creeks and that sort of thing, and stored in those reservoirs, like that Harlan County Reservoir. And those irrigation districts that were formed by the federal government years ago, actually those people have that water rights to that water. They have a certain amount of that water can be delivered to their land on the farming, on their to farm with, on irrigation farming under surface water.
So if Senator Rakes has dams on his property and water backs up, does he own that water behind that dam?
I think that if that isn't a federal project, then I don't know how that would be addressed. Ordinarily not. If it's of any consequential size, I don't think he can lay claim to it. If it's smaller than a few acres, then I don't know if the state contests a claim to that water or not.
So he can't sell the water that would be on his land?
It depends on what you would say sell. If there was an industrial or construction company that wanted to use some of that water for some of their purposes, yes, he could sell that water out of his dam. It's done all the time.
Would he be able to sell it in the same way that these districts are going to be able to sell water?
Well, you mean for money, I guess? Yeah, he could sell it for money. I think the way...
Okay, now, back to the districts. Who is going to give these districts money?
For the water?
Yes. Who's going to purchase the water from these districts?
I think the state of Nebraska is making the first purchase of water.
And what will be done with the water when Nebraska purchases it?
My understanding is it'll be released down the river to come into compliance, to help come into compliance with the Republican River Compact.
If that water is available for release, can't the state order those districts to release that water without giving them money for it? If it's in the best interest of the state and the people, which is supposed to be what we're concerned about, could not the legislature order those districts to release that water and let it run downstream to help with the compliance with that pact?
Well, my understanding, and I've been told that they can't, that there is that water is set aside for those irrigated acres under that irrigation project. You'd have to talk to a water lawyer or some type on that to get that complete answer.
Thank you.
Record, please, Mr. Clerk.
38 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. President, on the advancement of LB 701.
LB 701 does advance.
Were you here the other day when Senator Dubas had a bill, and I'd made the remark that it was like a dog with a big bark, but it lacked teeth, and therefore it was a toothless bill? You remember me saying something to that effect? I'd like to ask Senator Pauls that question if he will respond.
Yes, Senator Pauls, will you yield?
Yes, I would.
And Senator Pauls, you did nod and indicate that you had heard an exchange of that kind between myself and Senator Dubas the other day on her bill, correct?
Yes, I did.
Well, this is a bill which, it seems to me, goes the opposite direction. It's pulling teeth. So why would you do that in your committee amendment? Or you're not aware that that's what it does?
Respond?
It says, this association shall not issue dentures. If it shall not issue dentures, then that means you're pulling the teeth. So why are you prohibiting the issuance of dentures? That's what I'd like to know, if you are so kind as to answer.
Well, in other words, that a person loaning money, if I'm going to loan money to you, I need to know certain things.
Well, why did you specifically put in your bill, association shall not issue dentures? Why would you put that specifically in the bill?
Are you talking about the amendment?
Yes.
Well, I don't see that.
Read lines 5 and 6.
Oh. I'm reading it from my paper here.
Take your time.
Three minutes and 10 seconds.
Just a second. I can't find it.
Because they're not dentists.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see you're playing with me now. Are you and I reading the same word, INDEBTEDNESS? My paper reads IN.
Are you on page 1,
Yes,
line
debentures.
5?
Yes, I am.
Shall not, the last two words on line 5 are
debentures,
shall not
yes.
issue. Why does it say shall not issue dentures?
Debentures. I'm sorry.
It shall not issue what?
Debentures.
Oh, debentures.
Yes.
I stand corrected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You had me.